Welcome to Bible Reader Companion. Our Bible reading this week is 2 Corinthians chapters 9 through 13 and James chapters 1 through 5. And our memory verse is 2 Corinthians 9 and verse 8, which says, "And God is able to make all grace abound towards you, that you always, having all sufficiency in all things, may have an abundance for every good work." We continue to look at the contrast between the physical and the spiritual, putting the emphasis on the spiritual. And Paul understood this as he looked at boasting in the Lord and not himself. When you turn over to 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 1. 2 Corinthians 12 and verse 1 beginning, New King James Version. "It is doubtless not profitable for me to boast. I will come to visions and revelations of the Lord. I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago, whether in the body I do not know, or whether out of the body I do not know, God knows, such a one was caught up to the third heaven. And I know such a man, whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know, God knows, how I was caught up into paradise and heard inexpressible words, which is not lawful for a man to utter. Of such a one I will boast, yet of myself I will not boast, except in my infirmities. For though I might desire to boast, I will not be a fool, for I will speak the truth. But I refrain, lest anyone should think of me above what he sees me to be, or hears from me. And lest I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure. Concerning this thing I plead with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And he said to me, My grace is sufficient for you. My strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore most gladly I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in needs, in persecutions, in distresses, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong." One of the problems many of us have today is putting too much trust in ourselves and expecting and depending upon ourselves instead of depending upon the Lord. Paul speaks of these revelations that he clearly is referring to himself that he had seen. And yet he said that's not where his focus is. That is not where the glory lies. The glory lies in what God could do for him and what God's grace could do for him. It was in the fact that God was able to give him strength in times of weakness. Do we have that kind of a mentality? Do we focus on what we are in this world, or do we focus on what God will do for us in the world to come? Do we focus on the physical weaknesses or strengths that we may have, instead of focusing on the fact that only by putting our faith and trust in Jesus can we have a hope of eternal salvation? Paul could boast of these revelations, but those revelations are not what saved him. Those revelations are not what gave him power to be able to convert men's souls. What converted men's souls was the gospel of Jesus Christ. And God said he allowed this to continue, that Paul might not become too proud. That's what Paul says. And that he might continue to focus upon God's grace instead of on who he was personally. And so we need to think about that, and we need to focus upon the grace of God. There's so many times we get caught up in the things of this world, good or bad. And instead of putting our faith and trust in the goodness and graciousness of God, we need to trust in him. We need to let our dependence be upon him instead of upon ourselves. That we might be able to say, as Paul did, God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you always, having all sufficiency in all things, may have an abundance for every good work. Let us put our trust and faith in the Lord. Let us do what's right and depend that God will take care of us and recognize it is through God that we have our salvation. We thank you for thinking on these things, and we hope you will join us again tomorrow.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook for more content like this.